Hi everyone, my name is Nasim Selmani and I was born and raised here in Finland, but I belong in ethnic and religious minorities in this society. I am the COO and one of the co-founders of a DEI agency called DayDay. DEI stands for Diversity, Equity and Inclusion. My DEI journey started 4 years ago when I became the first Chief Inclusion Officer at Slush. Slush is this huge tech and startup conference held in Helsinki. In this presentation, I will be telling you about inclusion, why it is important, and then I'm going to share also some of the learnings that I made while being the Slush's Chief Inclusion Officer. So let's start. I'm quite sure that most of us have a memory of being excluded in some point of our lives. And what I want you to do right now is to think about that moment when you were excluded, whether it happened in kindergarten or school or at work. And think about how did you feel in that situation. It doesn't feel good, right? And some of us might have these feelings also at work. And if that's the case, I'm quite sure it's logical for you as well that you can do your best then. And it has like several consequences. Well, the first is that you can't reach your full potential and because you're not motivated enough. The second thing is that you might stay silent in situations where you would actually have something to say, but because you feel that your opinions are not valued, so you just let it be. And the third thing is that you might not feel psychologically safe. But in addition to that, if you belong in minoritized or marginalized group, you might also feel minority stress. And like when surrounded by your coworkers, because you might be afraid of that. When is the next time that someone is going to say something inappropriate? For example, in a form of a discriminative joke. So basically, inclusion is the absence of exclusion. And that's why I wanted you to think about what exclusion feels. And inclusion means a continuous effort and practice to create spaces where anyone can feel valued and a sense of belonging. In other words, inclusion is an effort to create room for diversity and people with different backgrounds to be their authentic selves without the fear of discrimination. In an individual level, it means that you will be seen, heard, respected, and included. So why inclusion is important? And I'm going to give you some data points here. A study was made about teams where they had inclusive leaders. And they found out that teams are 17% more likely to report high performing when there's an inclusive leader, and 20% more likely to make high quality decisions, and 29% more likely to behave collaboratively. These are quite impressive figures, and there's a lot of studies made about DEI topics recently. So you can, for example, the big consulting companies have done a lot of research about this topic. So there's plenty of data available. So I'm not going there anymore. But I'm gonna share the learnings that I made while being the Slush's Chief Inclusion Officer. And this picture is actually taken from the main stage after the program ended. And it's taken over by the volunteers and some of the team members So building inclusion, in my opinion and in my experience, requires at least these three things that I'm going to mention soon. The first, and I think the most important thing, is the manager's support. Because if you don't have the manager's support, then it's really difficult to advance inclusion within the organization. And if the company makes the decision to advance inclusion, it must be prioritized by everyone, including the managers. And of course, managers are the ones that can give you also resources to do the work that is needed in order to build inclusion. And me, for example, I invested in the well-being because I wanted everyone to know that they are taken care of when they need to be taken care of the most. And the second thing was that I invested in a feedback system or tool, which gathered information, very valuable information from our employees in a weekly basis. So basically, I knew all the time what the employees of our organization were thinking and what were the things that I needed to improve or make more inclusive. For example, the employees pinpointed some structures and processes and practices that needed to be more inclusive. Then the last thing, which I'm going to raise here, is the time. Because the change doesn't happen overnight. So you need to invest time in this work. And we, for example, we invested a lot of time in spending time together with the whole team, and also like our own teams. We spent a lot of time just having conversations and getting to know each other. And we also had these very uncomfortable conversations, for example, about diversity and actually the lack of it within our team, our speaker lineup, and our attendees. And we tried to understand the situation more with the conversations that we had. And the last thing that we did also, which I want to mention here, is that on Fridays we had this thing called Friday brunch. So it was brunch, which was this session, 2-hour session, where anyone from the organization were able to come and present something that they were really passionate about. And that made them feel seen and heard because they had the attention of the entire organization. And we also had a couple of sessions about taboos. And I can tell you that those conversations were really uncomfortable, but those were the ones also that built trust among us. So what I want you to know from this presentation as well is that in order to build inclusion, you need manager support, resources, and time. Because the change doesn't happen overnight, and building inclusion is a continuous process, and it's not a state that you can achieve. And I want to end this presentation with the wise words of Simon Sinek. When we take care of our people take care of our business. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hey.
That was a wonderful talk, actually. Very nice.
Thank you so much. And I actually didn't know that in the beginning when you presented me that I was supposed to say something about me and the presentation. So that's why I stayed muted. Sorry for that.
All good. Okay, so do we have some questions? Okay, I have some questions. Like, for example, I think I would like to know that how would you, if you want to kind of bring this sort of environment in a company, how would you tell your higher managers or to adapt to this if they are not already doing it?
Well, I think that if an organization wants to advance inclusion, like it has to come, like usually it comes also within the organization. So some of the people might feel that they are being excluded. And usually if there are some people that says something like that, then it's of course like the role of managers to see that and also take that further. So I think building inclusion in an organization comes within the organization, actually.
And may I just add that it's also a very communicational issue. So, for example, if you want to get the manager support, usually you need to internally communicate about the moral, but also the business imperative that lies within building inclusion in an organization. And luckily, this is becoming more and more known. So it's and there's more data and more research available about the benefits. So therefore, it is more easily argumented to the leadership levels as well. That's also one point. The benefits are clear, so it wouldn't need a lot to get people behind it in that sense.
And there
Yeah.
actually there was like as in my presentation, I said that there were I brought up just some data points, but there's also a lot of data points that combines the effect of diversity and inclusion. And that's something that I wanted to leave out from this presentation because I wanted to focus on only inclusion.
Yeah, I think it is a pretty emotional and heavy topic that every company should adapt to, I feel. But like, I mean, yeah, there are a few companies that aren't still adapting, and but it should be an important part, I feel. So, I
Yes,
mean,
definitely.
yep.
I
Yep.
totally agree with you, and I think that the companies who will adapt in building inclusion will also benefit from it in the longer term. And those who do not advance inclusion in their companies, they will suffer from it.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of also feel that maybe companies should also run more programs to make people aware of this. I mean, uh, maybe there are programs, but not that people know of in the company that are running. I mean, it's just in the background. So I really feel that it's really important.
Definitely, and that goes into Nasim's points about giving it the resources and time needed, because we still need a lot of awareness raising regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion as a whole. So definitely it requires time, because we still need to deepen our understanding about these topics. And diversity, equity, and inclusion are a big umbrella, and there are many aspects under it that we need to take into account. So definitely we need to raise awareness and move to more concrete action. And one way to do that is, for example, by measuring inclusion. And even though it's hard because it's very qualitative way of measuring inclusion, but that is we still need to develop these types of standardized processes and practices of measuring it in order to also detect areas of improvement within an organizational level.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we actually measured that with different questions at Slush as well. We didn't exclusively ask whether you feel included, but with different questions we were able to see how engaged our employees were.
Yeah. I think that's pretty good. I mean, I also feel that like in certain companies, like when I was in India, the experience was very much different. But when I moved to Germany, I started seeing that people really care more about this. And I mean, even in my previous company, there were some of the numbers exclusively like, at this position we really want to hire female devs. What do you feel about this? Like, if there are some job profiles exclusively based off female devs, or at this position we really want to hire female devs, what do you think about it? Is it biased, or what?
Well, I could
Well, I
turn it
think
this.
that,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I think that the most important thing is to highlight that there is a good intention behind it, and to showcase what is the main idea of this kind of campaign or promotion, and highlight that the idea is not to exclude, but the idea is to support and enhance the possibilities of some minority groups. So I think that the communication is the key, and not just thinking about what is the surface, that we want more women into tech or women into dev positions, but to highlight that we want to support these groups who want to attend to these positions.
Exactly, and sometimes that is necessary when there are, for example, industries or companies where there is a lot of homogeneity and lack of, for example, underrepresented groups. So I think Emmi verbalized and communicated it very brilliantly.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, I mean, I really want, when I moved to Germany, I really saw this change, and I really felt that I should really start thinking about it, because in India, the people still think that, okay, the tech uh, is there, but like they really want to get things done. I mean, it's like, there are no priorities of stuff, whether what balance we really want to keep in our gender, or so. That was a really good stuff when I moved here. So I think your talk was really good, Nasim. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much, and for it was a pleasure to be here and talk about inclusion.